Good morning, baseball fans, and welcome back to Dan's Vintage Baseball PC. Don't be fooled by this fancy name that I've created for this channel because it's just me and baseball cards. And today, I'm excited because it's one of my cards, but it's an outstanding collection. My friend Ian, who's come on to talk about his Christy Mathewson collection, and we'll see that in a little bit. But let's talk a little bit about Mathewson first. He was born in Factoryville, Pennsylvania. Unfortunate name, but if you know anything about Pennsylvania, they have some of the strangest names of towns. But Factoryville was a town in northeast Pennsylvania. Christy Mathewson grew up in coal country. He was, from a very early age, a bright bulb in his family, and he eventually went to Bucknell University, where he played baseball, football, and I believe basketball. He was actually a professional football player for a short period of time in his time at Bucknell University. He was eventually found and drafted by not drafted, but signed by the Giants. Started out a little rocky, came up, got sent back down, but ultimately became a New York Giant legend. And so Christy Mathewson, as you could see from his stats, was probably top 2 to 3 pitchers in the dead ball era. As you can see, 1901, he starts to pitch really strongly. A little off in 1902, but in 3, I believe that's when John McGraw comes in, and Christy Mathewson and John McGraw had a great relationship for their entire lives. Mathewson pitches, wins 30 games 3 years in a row, including the magical year of 1905, when the New York Giants won the World Series. And if you recall from my Mike Donlin video a few weeks ago, Donlin was the outfielder on that team who could have been the MVP. But as you can see from Mathewson's number, he could have also been an MVP if there was one. Fell off a little bit in 06 and 07, but he came back in 1908 with one of his greatest seasons, 37 wins, 1.43 ERA, and is a strong pitcher throughout up until 1914, and then he starts to succumb to some injuries. As you can see in Mathewson's final season, 1916, he was 1-0. He pitched one game. He was the manager of the Cincinnati Redlegs at the time, and that game in 1916 is legendary because it's him pitching against Mordecai Three Finger Brown, who had returned to the Cubs in 1916 for his last hurrah, and the two of them faced off in a game. They both pitched the entire game. As you can see, Mathewson gave up 15 hits and 8 runs, but he won the game because the old Three Finger gave up 10 runs, I think. But it was, I guess, more of a spectacle about the two of them. Sadly, Mathewson goes into the Army for World War I. He is exposed to chemical weapons, mustard gas. It damages his lungs. His brother, who he was exposed to, had TB and passed away. Mathewson starts to exhibit some of the symptoms of TB, and he goes up to a sanatorium in Saranac Lake, New York, and he actually gets better. And in 1925, he was recruited to become the general manager of the Boston Braves and started to put some real serious effort into it. Came back and unfortunately just couldn't do it. Came back to Saranac Lake in upstate New York, and in the tail end of 1925, he passed away. Sadly, at the age of 45. Really sad story. Christy Mathewson is a bright, shining star in the history of baseball, not just because of his performance, but because of his character and the way he carried himself. So I have, because getting his cards are very difficult to do, I have one card of Christy Mathewson, but it's a good one. It's T206 Piedmont 150, white cap. It's a 1MK because there is some writing on the back. Let me see. I'll go back to let's go back to here. You can see there's not only a stamp there, but there's also some damage. And the stamp says PO or PD, I'm not sure. So that's my one and only Christy Mathewson card. I acquired it through Facebook. There's a really, really good Facebook group called the Tobacco Cards group, and it's run by a bunch of guys who have been collecting tobacco cards for decades. And one of the guys who runs the group was upgrading, I guess, and offered this to me at a really, for the time being, a really good price. I think some of the cards have come down a little bit in price, but I still think I got a value on this. And so this is one of my top T206 cards. Proud to have it. So let's bring on our special guest. We've seen him before in the DiMaggio episode, but here he is again, joining us for the Christy Mathewson episode. How you doing, Ian?
Doing good, Dan. Thanks for having me on again.
Okay, so we talked a lot about Joe. What about Christy Mathewson, Maddie? What about him that drew you to collect what is a super collector thing at this point? Because we'll see the photo of your collection when I go to it. But what is it about Mathewson that got you into him?
Yeah, it's kind of what I mentioned with DiMaggio. Is just I like to collect with kind of that legend and mystique, the players that have that around them, and Maddie's just got that legend status. And you mentioned the 1905 year in the World Series, but Maddie pitched 3 shutouts in 6 days in that World Series to beat the A's.
That's
So
right.
I mean,
Yeah.
you can say it's a different time and game's different, but that's something that's never even going to be sniffed again. Never even
I
be
think
considered.
I did leave that out. I mean, we could talk a long time about. I'd rather get you on than talk too long. But he faced in that World Series the Philadelphia A's, and I think Eddie Plank was one of the and there was another pitcher, right? Was it Chief Bender? There was he beat 2 Hall of Famers, is my
Yeah,
recollection.
Plank, Bender should have been there around that year.
Yeah.
Yeah, Plank and Bender, I believe.
So okay, so I'm sorry I interrupted you to throw in a little trivia, but yeah, so Mathewson is one of those larger than life kind of guys, and I guess that makes him attractive because he's very expensive in the hobby, as you well know. So let's bring up your the money shot, so to speak. Yeah, so I mean, it's your collection. I have the same feeling. People see the display behind me, and they're like, "Oh, that's so," and I'm like, "No, it's just my collection." So you're a little understated, but I look at this thing and I'm like, "Oh man, I can't even fathom." Like I said, I have one of Mathewson's cards, and I really, I see the T205 there, the green background, which to me is probably his single most iconic card. And I don't have it. And the reason I don't have it is because I keep getting sniped. I keep losing out. It's the most frustrating thing that I don't own that card because I should own it. And anyway, so enough about me. Tell me about the T205. How'd you get it? And how can I get one?
Yeah, that was actually my first Christie card. So I had just finished reading that book in the back there, The Player, and I was like, I'm going to pick up a couple Christie cards now. And, looking into them, that was easily the first one that I wanted. It's just, T205 set, there's websites about it. Like everybody knows about that set, but, T206 gets all the attention, rightfully so, but T205, they're much scarcer. First card, one of the first cards to have, bios and player stats on the back instead of just full advertisements or checklists. So, I mean, it's really just, a great card. The gold bordering, just the shot itself is just great. Picked it up on eBay, just an eBay purchase, and got it in hand, and that's what kickstarted the Christie craze there. And
It's yeah, T206. You got the 2 pitching ones, the dark hat and the white hat and the light hat or whatever they call it. I have the
white cap and dark cap.
yeah, white cap and dark cap. Yeah, so you got the 2 of those, and then there's the orange one in the middle. We'll get to that a little later. there's the tall one behind it, the SGC 3. Um, tell me about that card.
Yeah, that's the T201. So that's the one that folds down and kind of becomes a different player, and they share the same legs. And I think it's 55 tops double headers kind of
Right,
copy
right.
that. But yeah, just Matty and his famous pitching pose there, and
Yeah.
nice artwork. And that was kind of one set that I wasn't really too big on at first, but the more I've looked at them and kind of held them in hand, they've really, really grown on me. Good art on them.
Who's the other player? Do you know?
I don't remember. I
Yeah,
was
it's
trying to
not,
remember. I don't remember at
not
the
a
time.
biggie. Yeah, I do not have a card from that set. I've tried. I tried to get the Christie a couple of times, but I will eventually. Now the far right. So it's cool. There's a lot of the Mathewson photos. The T206, the T201, the caramel card, the orange one. It's all sort of he's in the set position, but in the one on the far right, bottom right, he's like winding up with the arms over his head. What card is that?
That's the E90-1.
Nice.
So
And
caramel
then
card. Yeah, great shot. Sunset in the background.
yeah, the color is great on that. Okay, so all the way far left now. That card I don't know at all. I don't even recognize it. What is that one?
That I have that one with me actually. That one's the E91 caramel set.
Okay. And what year is that?
That is 1909.
Okay. All right.
So that's
So we
actually one of my. The set gets a lot of little grief sometimes, a lot of reused images between different series and things like that. But I really enjoy the artwork on it. It's probably one of my top favorite sets.
yeah,
Just I like the background, kind of looks like a painting, and just good images on those.
yeah, and the Sporting Life we'll get to, but this is sort of like a good, not just a Mathewson collection, but it's like a um, all different varieties of obscure tobacco cards collection. And I don't specifically do this, but I try to get at least one card in as many different sets as possible. So I think you kind of accomplish that with one player here.
Yeah, I try the same thing. Try to, have some kind of representation from as many sets as I can. And if it's all the same player and that player is Maddie, I'll take it.
All the better, right? So, all right. So we talked about the T 205, which again, seeing this card makes me sad, but not for you, but I will eventually get one. So the other one's the Sporting Life, which has another one of those classic Mathewson poses where he looks like, a professor, which he kind of was. I mean, he's an extraordinarily smart guy. At Bucknell, he was something like the three sport uh, uh, class president. He was like the BMOC, and rightfully so. But this card, I mean, I know the Sporting Life set. I don't have any. I know I probably should, but tell us about this one, how you got it, and whatever else you want to talk about with this amazing card.
Yeah, just touching on what you said about Christy, real quick is he was kind of the first modern day pitching star, and he just you mentioned college boy and multi-sport athlete, and he was the good clean cut player that kind of made baseball a little more respectable and wasn't the gambling, drinking, rowdy type that baseball players had been associated as. So I think this picture really captures that. It's a Carl Horner portrait that it's based off of, and the word that I think of when I see this is just regal. I mean, he's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
it just oozes, that Christian gentleman nickname, and one of the best of all time. So yeah, the M116. If I had to choose, this set's probably my favorite set of all time. It's all portraits, no action shots. I think the portraits are much better than the T206. There's 3 different back variations if you want to do that. Blue background and pastel. The blue
yeah,
are more scarce. I kind of like the look of the pastel a bit better. But these were offered as mail-ins from Sporting Life, and for that reason, you can usually find some in decently high grades. This one's obviously authentic and minimum size not met, which we could do a whole other 30-minute talk
Oh yeah,
on what I feel about the minimum size not met. But
yeah. Especially for things like this. I mean, I don't know how they establish what the size would be because the sizes vary so much in a lot of these pre-war, especially tobacco cards from this era. Although Sporting Life is not tobacco, is a sports magazine, but the same concept is that
Mhm.
you can't get the printing capabilities back then would not give you the same exact size for every card. And I know they have a variation that can be off by a little bit, but you're right. I mean, this card, nobody trimmed it. They should just give it a grade. And then, honestly, a grade it would be like a 2 or 3, which would probably have made it more expensive than
Yeah.
you could have afforded. But anyway, the do you know how many cards are in this the M116 set?
So I think once you get through the variations, it's over 400 cards.
Yeah,
So it's a huge set. I mean, there's
it's like the monster, which honestly, I don't know anybody who's currently doing the monster, but I thought about it for a while, and then I realized it was not something I was going to be capable of doing in the years that I have left on this planet. So, anyway,
monster for a reason.
yeah, exactly. So, two more. I, I just love the orange in this card, and I know why it's an authentic, and it's got that little P, what looks like a P written up there, but still, I mean, like standard caramel E93. I think I have one of these cards. I think Sam Crawford I have of this set, but I know they're difficult to get. So kudos on you for this one. Tell me about this card if you can.
Yeah, this is actually just a pickup on Twitter. Yeah, pretty standard caramel issue. It's one of the more popular ones, but like you, just that vibrant orange background. It's got that same pose as the T206, but just that background really brings it in for me. Uh, Creases don't really bother me too much. I still think it presents pretty well, all things considered for that. Um, the P's to P. I think if I had an upgrade candidate at one point, this is one I'd like to upgrade at some point. Usually, I'm usually fine with authentics and ones and don't upgrade cards, but this is one that I just like so much that at some point in time it'll probably get bumped up. But 30 card checklist for the set, more than half are Hall of Famers, so it's a real popular set for a reason. Not the topic of this video, but one cool thing I like to mention about this set is it does have Cy Young hitting in that set.
Yeah,
So if you haven't seen that card, check it out.
yeah. The I guess it has Cobb and Johnson also, which makes it kind of an impossible set to complete, even though it's only 30 cards.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I have Sam Crawford. And it's like a one that I paid like $250 for. So, just to get like the medium level Hall of Famers is tough. And then on the right is what is Williams CML? What is that?
Yeah, Williams Caramel.
Okay.
So they actually later after this set became Oxford Confectionery. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with Oxford Confectionery cards.
Yep.
So yeah, same company. But yeah, Caramel Company. Same poses as the M116 mostly. All
Right.
portraits in it, all that red background, blank backs. They're very thin stock, so they're much thinner. So that does make them a little bit more scarce because probably less survived. But this one's trimmed along the bottom. So
Right.
normally right underneath it says Williams Caramel Company and where they're located.
Right.
So I guess some kid didn't want the advertising and snipped it off.
Yeah. People did that with the Gaudi cards, and there's a lot of trimmed Gaudis where the Gaudi part of it is cut
Mm-hmm.
off in the front. What's on the back of the Williams caramel?
Those are blank back, so it's just
Like that's
straight blank. Yep.
because I think on my standard caramel, there's a checklist on the back, but that's not the case with all of them. What's on the back of the Christie, the orange Christie there?
So
Do you
that one, I believe, does have the checklist on the back. Yeah, would have the checklist on the back if it wasn't
Oh, yeah.
all
Okay.
torn, but yeah, that one does have the checklist, and then the caramel is blank back there, or the other caramel.
And now we got this one, which that's that's a piece of art, and
Mm-hmm.
we talk about collecting vintage, and I think we're both player collectors. But one of the things that is attractive to me about vintage is just the artwork, and just the way that these the colors and the poses, and these are painters. These are guys that they actually hired to paint. So I'm assuming that these guys, who I don't know who did this painting, but he probably had an art career separate and apart from doing baseball cards. But tell me about this. Is the E102?
Yep. So just an anonymous set. So no one's really sure who released this one, which that's still kind of amazing to me these days with all the research that's been done and things like that. That we still have anonymous sets, but kind of adds to the allure of it to me. This same picture is used in a lot of different sets. So there's, probably 5 off the top of my head I can think of that use the same picture. This one, though, is 29 card set, 25 different players, a couple different pose variations, has the list of players on the back, but really just awesome shot. Like you
Yeah,
mentioned, just the artwork is great on it. And it's forefront in the display for a reason, just presents super well. Good color on it, nice follow through pose. You
yeah,
can see they
yeah.
didn't misspell his name on there, which was
Oh,
very common.
yeah. 2 T's, right? Yeah,
Yep, very common back then, especially for Matty. He's got quite a few
yeah,
of those.
yeah. The blue yellow. It's like a sunset with the perfect green grass. It's really quite striking. Um, and of course, the sideways, the vertical.
Hmm.
I'm sorry, the horizontal is something that you don't see that often in the tobacco cards. I think Teach 06 only has a few of them, if I recall. So that's kind of an interesting aspect too. So there we go. Let's go back to the money shot. Congrats on this,
Thank
and
you.
I'm sure it's going to be growing.
I've
Um,
actually got 3 more on the way. Just it's kind of a moving target
yeah.
uh, to hit. I have a T206 portrait on the way, and
Oh,
then
that's right. Yeah, that's right. He has a portrait. I was just, I did a few weeks ago. I did a video about Mike Donlin, who was his. I mentioned in the intro, his teammate on that great 1905 Giants team. And when you were talking about Christy as like this sort of college boy and clean cut and everybody loves him, and Donlin was like the complete opposite.
yep.
He was like he once went to jail for public drunkenness, and he quit to go with his vaudeville wife, and I can only imagine the two of them on the same team, and they were the Donlin was the best player of the 8 in the field, and Mathewson was obviously the best
Mhm.
pitcher, so they obviously worked together at some level. But it's sort of funny because you think about that. But anyway, so Mathewson collection, terrific. So happy to have
Thank
you on
you.
again, Ian. And I do really appreciate you taking the time out to show my viewers this collection as you did with the DiMaggio collection. So, any parting words for my viewers? Hopefully you'll be back for another episode of another player who you have an awesome photo like that. So, any parting words, my viewers?
No, just thank you. I had a blast talking cards, and always happy to jump on anytime I got some players you want to chat about.
Okay, sounds good. It's an open invitation, so consider it done. So anyway, thank you. Thanks, viewers. We'll be back next week with another episode, and so long.